It was a Wednesday, March 18th, 2015. Roll call was at 7 o'clock a.m., just like every morning, except this time 3 names went unanswered, and 3 beds were still perfectly made. The dorm matron, Ms. Halbrook, thought it was a mistake. Maybe they had risen early, maybe they went down to breakfast without signing out. But the lights were still off, the curtains drawn. The room was silent. She knocked once, then again, no answer. She used the master key to unlock the door, but the handle wouldn't turn because the bolt lock was fastened from the inside. When the handyman arrived 5 minutes later and forced it open, they found the room completely intact. Beds made, shoes aligned beneath each frame, chargers still plugged into the wall. No blood, no broken glass, no signs of forced entry, just an empty room, and 3 missing girls. Their names were Camille Santos, 14, Maya Chen, 15, Lilah Brown, 14. All 3 were boarders at St. Augustine's Academy, a private Catholic school built in the 1950s on the wooded edge of a quiet Midwestern town. They shared dorm 4C, a standard quad room on the 2nd floor, 2 bunk beds, 1 bathroom, 2 desks, and 1 long mirror. Each girl had a different background. Camille was quiet but curious. She kept a journal under her mattress. Maya was top of the class in science, loved puzzles, and had asthma. Lilah had only transferred the year before, a scholarship student. She rarely spoke during morning prayers. There were no signs of conflict between them, no disciplinary issues, no history of sneaking out. The night of March 17th, they were last seen at 9:28 p.m., exiting the study hall with other students and returning to their room together. By all accounts, the girls never left that room again. The hallway cameras on their floor hadn't worked in over a month. Ongoing maintenance, the tech log said. The only OTO. Her camera covering that wing was pointed at the stairwell near the faculty lounge. It never captured any of the girls exiting. Not at night, not in the morning, not ever. The local police were called by noon. Parents arrived by nightfall. The dormitory was sealed for investigation. A complete sweep of the school grounds was ordered. No trace of them was found. No footprints in the flower beds. No fingerprints outside the windows. No disturbances in the snow behind the building. Still unbroken, like no one had passed through at all. For weeks, rumors churned through the school like wind in an empty hallway. Some said the girls had run away. Others whispered about the basement, that no student was allowed down there after dark. One claimed to hear humming from inside dorm 4C the night after they vanished. But no theory explained the central truth. The room was locked from the inside, and no one had seen them leave. During the first formal press briefing, the school's headmaster, Father Reyes, stood stiff at the podium. "We are devastated by this tragedy. We are cooperating fully with local authorities. We ask for privacy and prayer during this time." He answered no questions. A week later, the school quietly replaced the locks on all dormitory rooms. No explanation was given. A small memorial was placed beside the garden at the rear of the school. 3 candles, 3 framed photos, 3 names carved into a wooden bench. Most students walked past it without looking. By June, the dorm room was reassigned to a new group of girls. Fresh paint, new bunks, same room number. The official status of the 3 girls remained unchanged, missing, under investigation. But those who knew them, the ones who lived in the room next door, the staff who took attendance that morning, never believed they simply ran away. Because you don't run without your coat, you don't run without your inhaler, and you don't bolt the door behind you from the inside. What happened inside dorm 4C that night wasn't seen, wasn't heard, and for 7 years, wasn't spoken of again. By the 2nd day, investigators started using the word impossible. The room had no secondary exit. The windows were sealed from the inside, old metal frames with rusted locks, barely openable beyond 3 inches. The door had been bolted with a thumb latch only accessible from within the room. There was no crawl space, no attic access, no back panel in the closet. There was only one way in or out. And yet there were no girls inside. The initial search spread out to the surrounding grounds. Local police and volunteer teams combed the fields, fences, maintenance sheds, and the woods behind the chapel. A nearby pond was drained. Security dogs were brought in. Helicopters circled overhead for 3 days. Nothing. No scent trail, no dropped item, not even a shoe print. A missing persons bulletin was released statewide. Photos of the girls circulated on TV and social media, the same yearbook shots used on the memorial bench later. Camille with her tilted head and dimpled smile. Maya holding a stack of books, half hidden behind her glasses. Lilah in a borrowed cardigan, hair tied back, expression unreadable. Hundreds of calls came in. None led anywhere. By the end of the week, the police quietly reclassified the case from runaway to suspicious disappearance. Inside the school, unease curdled into silence. Students weren't allowed to speak to media. Staff were instructed to refer all questions to administration. Some students were pulled out by their parents. Most stayed. But no one slept well, especially not in the second-floor wing. On March 23rd, 5 days after the girls vanished, an emergency fire drill was run at midnight. All students evacuated in under 4 minutes, except one girl, found curled under her bed in dorm 3B, clutching a rosary. When asked what happened, she kept repeating, "I didn't hear the alarm. I unsolved." Lee heard someone breathing. She was moved off campus the next day. A school counselor, Ms. Deirdre, later admitted that several girls requested room transfers after the disappearance. Not for safety, not for fear, but because of the hallway at night. They complained that it echoed too much. Even when no one was walking. One described it as a feeling like the walls were waiting. But the most unnerving detail came from someone outside the student body, a junior custodian named Raymond Hill, who was assigned to clean dorm 4C the day before the girls went missing. He'd gone in after lunch. The girls weren't there, still in class. But he remembered 2 things. There was a bowl of cough drops on the desk, unwrapped, stacked neatly. One of the bunk beds was completely stripped, as if no one had ever slept in it. He thought it was odd, but didn't report it. He was never interviewed again. 2 years later, he left the job and moved out of state. When asked by phone in 2022 if he remembered anything else, he said, "Just that it felt wrong, like the room was already empty, even though I knew it wasn't." 1 week after the disappearance, a prayer vigil was held in the school courtyard. Parents stood under umbrellas. Staff held candles. Father Reyes led the group in silence. He didn't speak. He just stood beside the podium, unreadable. Someone tried to start a hymn, but halfway through the sound collapsed. No one finished the verse. At the end of the investigation's 2nd week, the case had no suspects, no evidence, and no official explanation, only a locked room. 3 missing girls, and one unsettling detail that nobody could answer. The thumb bolt on the inside of the door was found fully turned when it was opened, meaning it was locked when the girls were still inside, and it was still locked when they weren't. The dorm room was never used again. It remained closed for the rest of the year. Some students said they heard someone inside during the spring term, shuffling, coughing, a whisper, but the staff dismissed it, called it nerves, because there was nothing behind the door anymore. By the 2nd day, investigators started using the word impossible. The room had no secondary exit. The windows were sealed from the inside, old metal frames with rusted locks, barely openable beyond 3 inches. The door had been bolted with a thumb latch only accessible from within the room. There was no crawl space, no attic access, no back panel in the closet. There was only one way in or out. And yet, there were no girls inside. The initial search spread out to the surrounding grounds. Local police and volunteer teams combed the fields, fences, maintenance sheds, and the woods behind the chapel. A nearby pond was drained. Security dogs were brought in. Helicopters circled overhead for 3 days. Nothing. No scent trail, no dropped item, not even a shoe print. A missing persons bulletin was released statewide. Photos of the girls circulated on TV and social media, the same yearbook shots used on the memorial bench later. Camille with her tilted head and dimpled smile. Maya holding a stack of books, half hidden behind her glasses. Lilah in a borrowed cardigan, hair tied back, expression unreadable. Hundreds of calls came in. None led anywhere. By the end of the week, the police quietly reclassified the case from runaway to suspicious disappearance. Inside the school, unease curdled into silence. Students weren't allowed to speak to media. Staff were instructed to refer all questions to administration. Some students were pulled out by their parents. Most stayed, but no one slept well, especially not in the second-floor wing. On March 23rd, 5 days after the girls vanished, an emergency fire drill was run at midnight. All students evacuated in under 4 minutes, except one girl, found curled under her bed in dorm 3B, clutching a rosary. When asked what happened, she kept repeating, "I didn't hear the alarm. I only heard someone breathing." She was moved off campus the next day. A school counselor, Miss Deirdre, later admitted that several girls requested room transfers after the disappearance, not for safety, not for fear, but because of the hallway at night. They complained that it echoed too much, even when no one was walking. One described it as a feeling like the walls were waiting. But the most unnerving detail came from someone outside the student body, a junior custodian named Raymond Hill, who was assigned to clean dorm 4C the day before the girls went missing. He'd gone in after lunch. The girls weren't there, still in class, but he remembered 2 things. There was a bowl of cough drops on the desk, unwrapped, stacked neatly. One of the bunk beds was completely stripped, as if no one had ever slept in it. He thought it was odd, but didn't report it. He was never interviewed again. 2 years later, he left the job and moved out of state. When asked by phone in 2022 if he remembered anything else, he said, "Just that it felt wrong, like the room was already empty, even though I knew it wasn't." 1 week after the disappearance, a prayer vigil was held in the school courtyard. Parents stood under umbrellas. Staff held candles. Father Reyes led the group in silence. He didn't speak. He just stood beside the podium, unreadable. Someone tried to start a hymn, but halfway through the sound collapsed. No one finished the verse. At the end of the investigation's 2nd week, the case had no suspects, no evidence, and no official explanation. Only a locked room, 3 missing girls, and one unsettling detail that nobody could answer. The thumb bolt on the inside of the door was found fully turned when it was opened, meaning it was locked when the girls were still inside, and it was still locked when they weren't. The dorm room was never used again. It remained closed for the rest of the year. Some students said they heard someone inside during the spring term, shuffling, coughing. A whisper, but the staff dismissed it, called it nerves, because there was nothing behind the door anymore. Her name was Nadia Hale. She was 14 at the time. She was supposed to be in that room. She'd been assigned to dorm 4C at the beginning of the spring term, just 2 weeks before the disappearance. But she'd asked for a room reassignment on the very same day she moved in. No disciplinary issue, no incident. She just didn't want to sleep there. The request was filed quietly. The administration transferred her to dorm 2B within 24 hours. At the time, it was chalked up to a roommate mismatch, maybe anxiety, maybe homesickness. But after the 3 girls went missing, the questions began. Why did she leave? Did she notice something strange? Nadia didn't speak to the police. Her parents declined interviews. The school made sure she was left out of press coverage. She finished the semester, graduated on time, left town. It wasn't until 2022, when the case was reopened during a historical records audit, that someone tracked her down. She was living in Boston now. Art student, quiet, private. When the state investigator called, she hesitated. She said she didn't remember much, didn't want to revisit it. But after a few days, she agreed to one in-person interview. She didn't ask for money. She only asked that it not be recorded. They met at a park bench near the Charles River. She didn't bring any papers, just sat down, held a thermos in her lap, and said, "I didn't leave that room because of the girls. I left because I didn't want to see what was behind them." She explained. The first night she moved in, everything was normal. Camille offered her the top bunk. Maya pointed out where to store her toiletries. Lilah barely spoke, just nodded once from her lower bunk. Lights out was at 10 p.m. She woke up at 2:17 a.m. No sound, no movement, just cold. She Ned over in bed and looked toward the other bunks. What she saw wasn't movement. It was stillness. They were all asleep, but there was a shadow standing at the foot of their beds, like it was checking them, one at a time. She blinked, gone. The next night it happened again, but this time it wasn't standing. It was crouched behind the desk. No face, just the shape of a head and long arms. She thought it was Lilah at first, but Lilah's bed was still occupied. The thing behind the desk never moved, not for hours. She didn't sleep again that night. By the third night, she started keeping her shoes on. She never unpacked her suitcase. She slept with a hoodie tied around her waist like a belt. She told Camille she had trouble adjusting, told Maya she had a cold, but she didn't tell anyone what she saw. Because the fourth night, she didn't see anything. She just heard something whisper from under her bunk. "You weren't supposed to be here." That morning, she went straight to the office and requested a transfer. She told the staff she needed a room with fewer windows. It was a lie. The room only had one. She was reassigned by lunch. She never entered dorm 4C again. In the years since, she hadn't told anyone. Not her friends, not her therapist, not even herself some days. She said she convinced herself it was sleep paralysis, stress, an overactive imagination. But when the news broke in 2022 that the room was being reviewed again, that footage had been discovered. She couldn't ignore the memory anymore. Before she stood up to leave, she said one last thing. "When I switched rooms, I thought I was being dramatic, overreacting. But the night after I left, I dreamed the door to 4C was open, and all three of them were sitting on the floor, staring at the fourth bed like they were waiting for someone. I woke up crying, and I've never dreamed of them again." The investigator asked her if she ever saw the fourth bed, the one everyone insisted was missing. She paused, then nodded once. "It was there the night I left, and someone was lying in it. I just didn't look long enough to see who." The hallway outside dorm 4C had one camera. Mounted above the fire alarm, it faced the narrow corridor where 4 rooms shared a single emergency exit stairwell. The footage from that angle was stored locally on a system so outdated it still used mini DV tapes. In 2015, after the girls vanished, investigators requested the footage, but the IT log stated clearly, Camera 4 East, non-functional, ongoing maintenance since February 27th. No video was pulled, no file was reviewed, and the tapes sat untouched, until 7 years later. In April of 2022, the school was undergoing closure. A property transfer required digitizing all historical media, tapes, logs, photos, to be sent to the Archdiocese. 2 interns were assigned to the media room. One box was labeled Dorm Wing, Camera 4E, 4C, Mar 2015. The interns nearly skipped it, assuming the camera had been broken, but they loaded the tape anyway, just to confirm. What they saw changed everything. The timestamp reads March 18, 2015, 3:46 a.m. The hallway is quiet. The overhead fluorescent flickers faintly, buzzing slightly. No motion, no people. Then, at 3:47:08, something passes across the bottom of the door frame. Not a foot, not a shadow, just pressure, as if someone was walking inside the room. But the door never opens. There is no creak, no handle movement, no light shift. Just a soft line of motion beneath the door. At 3:47:12, the light in the hallway dims for 2 seconds. The camera pixelates slightly, and on the far wall, just beside the corner window, a shadow appears. It's not human-sized. It's too tall, too thin. The limbs are wrong. It doesn't move. It just stays there, still, unblinking, like a shape waiting to be noticed. By 3:47:26, the hallway returns to normal. No noise, no shadow, no trace. And at 3:48:03, a loud click echoes from somewhere off camera. the hallway fire door unlocking itself without anyone near it. When the footage was shown to the head of campus security, his face went pale. He confirmed the motion-activated locks on that stairwell only disengage when a person physically exits through the alarm door or an admin override code is typed into the fire panel. Neither happened that night, and the door didn't open, it just unlocked. For no one. The footage was reviewed 17 times, frame by frame. No faces, no bodies, no entry. And most unsettling, no exit. One of the interns who found the tape, Daniel Reese, spoke quietly during his exit interview. We checked the camera logs again. The system marked the camera as non-functional that night because it detected no movement, but the tape still ran, which means the system didn't think anything was there. He paused. But something was. The hallway changed. Later that month, a retired night janitor named Gene Harper came forward. He'd been on shift the night the girls disappeared. No one had asked for his statement back then. He was just assigned to the lower level. But he remembered something. At about 4 in the morning, I was sweeping the lobby when I heard a metallic clunk above me, like someone opened the fire door on the second floor, but no alarm went off, and when I walked up to check, the hallway lights were out, completely dead, not flickering, just black. The camera footage was labeled inconclusive. It wasn't clear enough to be used as physical evidence, but for the first time since 2015, the incident file was reopened, because someone had finally watched the tape and realized the most terrifying part wasn't that the girls had vanished. It was that they were never seen leaving. And yet, something did. St. Augustine's had already begun renovations when the floor was opened. It was July 2022. The dormitories were being cleared, stripped down, and repurposed for a charter school. Most of the second floor had been emptied, walls repainted, closets dismantled. Dorm 4C was one of the last to be touched. The room had been closed since the 2015 investigation, technically unused but not untouched. The door had been sealed but never rekeyed. Staff sometimes entered for storage, but no one stayed long. It had a feeling, one contractor later said, like the air didn't want to move. 2 flooring workers were assigned to remove the warped wood beneath the beds. The goal, prep for vinyl panels, just a routine job. The younger one, Landon, began under the old bunk frame. He noticed right away. The boards weren't aligned, slightly mismatched grain, as if part of it had been replaced, just a small square section about 2 feet wide. He pried it loose and found what looked like scratches. They weren't random. They were tight, short, parallel lines, some overlapping. Not claw marks, not tool marks, just lines, dozens of them, some curved, some clean, some shallow. Others dug so deep they split the board. They weren't decoration, they were counting or signaling. Someone had made them deliberately. Underneath that layer, tucked just between 2 crossbeams, was a small cloth drawstring bag. Inside, 1 student ID photo, torn in half, a broken blue plastic bracelet, and a folded paper slip with 6 numbers scrawled in pencil. 3, 9, 4, 3, 7. The ID photo had no name, but the face was identifiable. It was Camille Santos. Her school ID had never been recovered during the initial investigation. The bracelet was traced back to a prayer circle kit sold in the campus store in 2014. The store log showed that only 3 were sold that winter. Camille was one of them. The most disturbing detail, though, wasn't in the items. It was in the wood. Just above the notch where the bag was found, the workers noticed something burned into the underside of the plank, CS2 initials, carved, then singed, just deep. Enough to stay. There were no matches, no lighters, no reason for fire to be used beneath the floor. Someone had gone to real effort to leave those marks, and someone else had gone to effort to cover them back up. Police were notified. The section of floor was cut out and removed, tested, photographed, cataloged. The age of the carvings was estimated at 6-7 years. The initials matched Camille. But the photo, the numbers, and the scratches raised more questions than they answered. The numbers were studied. They weren't dates. They weren't coordinates. They didn't match lockers, class rosters, or Bible verses. Until one former staff member, a retired substitute teacher, recognized the pattern. They were the room numbers of every student who had left St. Augustine's mid-semester in 2014 to 2015. Some were expulsions, some unexplained withdrawals. A few, the school claimed, didn't fit. All those rooms were on the second floor. All had formerly been quads. Now they were all listed as triples. Like 4C. Like someone had been erased, bed and all. The photo, the scratches, the hidden bag, none of it made official sense. But together they told a different version of the story. One that didn't begin with the girls vanishing. One that began long before, when someone tried to leave a warning beneath the bed where no one ever slept. In the final floorboard they removed, tucked between insulation and dust, they found something else. A string, wound tightly in a figure 8. Threadbare, still tied. Attached to it, a tiny piece of cloth, white, with faint pencil writing on the inside edge, "I'm still here." Most visitors to St. Augustine's were required to sign in, parents, vendors, tutors. Each entry recorded in a green spiral-bound logbook kept just inside the administrative office. Every page had 4 columns: name, time in, time out, reason for visit. The logbook from the week of March 16, 2015, the week the girls vanished, had 2 pages missing. They weren't torn. They were cleanly cut, as if with a razor. The page before shows March 16th. 5 entries, all routine. The page after jumps to March 19th. There is no mention of the 17th or 18th. At the time, the disappearance had already occurred. But the gap wasn't noticed, not until 7 years later, when the archives were digitized. A staff member from that year, Mrs. Carla Nels, a retired clerical assistant, still had her own notebook from her time at the school. She used it to track internal room inspections and student sign-outs. A habit, she said, from working in foster care years prior. On March 17th, she noted something odd in her margin. Unregistered guest arrived. Staff lounge, 7:42 p.m. No badge, no name. She had assumed it was a new hire or a repair technician. She mentioned it to the night matron, but no one followed up. There was no staff meeting log the next day, and no one ever claimed the visit. When the investigators returned to the original school files, they noticed something else. The security desk duty log, kept by night shift personnel, had an initialed note from the same night. Outside line called 2X, told to connect directly to RR, per instruction, no name logged. RR referred to Father Reyes, the headmaster. But Reyes had already gone home at that hour. His car was seen leaving the lot at 6:10 p.m., confirmed by camera. So who was the call transferred to, and why was it marked as per instruction? When questioned years later, Father Reyes, now in retirement in rural Pennsylvania, stated plainly, "I don't recall any visitor that night, and I gave no instructions for calls to be transferred." He declined further comment. A week later, the investigation received an anonymous letter, typed, "No return address." Inside, one line, "Ask who signed the basement keys out that night." The school's old key checkout log was kept on paper. Every night, staff member was required to sign a clipboard when taking keys to non-standard rooms, including the basement, which housed utility and storage areas. On March 17th, there was no sign-out entry, but the lock manufacturer, when contacted in 2022, confirmed the key cabinet was equipped with a mechanical log sensor, which did not rely on the clipboard. According to their records, a basement master key was removed at 8:03 p.m. and returned at 3:51 a.m. No signature, no name, just a code, Masha 00042A. That code wasn't listed to any current employee. It matched a spare access badge that had been deactivated 6 months earlier, after the resignation of a former assistant chaplain. His name was Logan Meyer. Meyer had worked at the school from 2012 to mid-2014. He had no public misconduct record, but according to internal HR notes, he left abruptly for personal reasons. He was never connected to the case. He was never mentioned in news reports. And his key card was believed to have been destroyed. When investigators attempted to reach him, they were told he'd passed away in 2019. A neighbor described him as quiet, reclusive, lived alone, didn't answer the door often. The only item on his shelf, the neighbor remembered, was an old photo of a school, tucked in a cracked frame. It was St. Augustine's. One final detail emerged from the school's maintenance closet during the renovation: a sealed cardboard box marked disposal, incomplete files. Inside, unused name tags, blank student folders, and one envelope that had no label, just the number 4C handwritten in faded pen. It contained one thing: a student room change form, never processed, signed by hand, no date, requested by Lilah Brown. And in the comments section, a single sentence: "Something in the room doesn't want me there." The final tape wasn't labeled. It was found in a plain white sleeve at the bottom of a drawer in the school's old AV room. During equipment clearance, the drawer had been taped shut with masking tape and marked "Do not erase." No one on the renovation team recognized the handwriting. The tape itself had no sticker. No markings, just the number 4C scratched into the plastic with something sharp. They assumed it was a duplicate, but when they played it, they realized it wasn't from the hallway camera. It was from inside the room. There had never been mention of a camera inside dorm 4C. St. Augustine's policy explicitly forbade surveillance in student quarters. Yet the footage was real, time-stamped, low resolution, but unmistakably from the top corner near the ceiling vent facing the bunks. March 18, 2015, 3:48 a.m. All three girls are visible. Camille is asleep, facing the wall. Maya is lying flat, one hand outside her blanket. Lilah is still, eyes closed, arms folded over her chest. No one moves for 20 seconds. Then Lilah's head turns, slowly, not toward the camera, but toward the door. She sits up. The other two don't stir. She tilts her head slightly, as if listening, then looks up, directly at the camera. Not in confusion, not in fear, in recognition. At 3:49:12 the screen flickers. Static. Then nothing. The rest of the tape is blank. No audio, no date stamp, just black. The video was reviewed multiple times by forensic analysts. The camera angle, the compression, the field of view, all consistent with analog security hardware used in the school's science labs. Except that no such camera had ever been logged for dorm 4C, and no power feed was registered to the wall vent. They removed the panel in 2022. Inside, they found a disconnected wire frayed and browned with time, but no lens, no mount. Only a square outline burned into the plaster, exactly the size of the missing device. When a copy of the footage was shown to Camille's mother, the first time she had seen her daughter move in 7 years, she said nothing at first, then whispered, "She's waiting for something. She's not afraid. She's listening." That fall, the building was scheduled, led for demolition. Structural assessments deemed it unfit for remodeling. The school never reopened. St. Augustine's was removed from all archdiocese directories. The property was sold to a private development firm. But dorm 4C remained untouched during demolition. A fire broke out in the wing before crews arrived. Electrical, they said. No one was injured. But the room burned completely. Nothing was recovered from the ashes. No furniture, no boards, no trace of the fourth bed. Of the 3 girls, no remains have ever been found. No confirmed sightings, no forensic matches. The case remains open, officially unsolved. Unofficially, most agree there was nothing more to find, because whatever happened in that room didn't leave behind answers, just air. The final entry in the reopened investigation file, written in the margin by a reviewing agent, reads, "If they didn't leave, maybe they weren't supposed to." And yet, 1 year after the building burned down, a local postal worker found an envelope wedged into the rear door of the new campus construction office. Inside, a printed still from the 2015 surveillance tape. Lilah, sitting up, staring at the camera. Across the bottom, in marker, "She knew." No fingerprints, no return address, no camera has caught whoever left it. but the workers at the site say they sometimes hear soft tapping in the drywall when the floor is quiet, like fingers counting or scratching. One said it stopped when he knocked back. Another said it didn't. The case is now archived. The photos are boxed. The floorboard is in storage, and the tape, the one no one was supposed to see, sits in a locked cabinet in an off-site records office, labeled simply, Dorm 4C, Night Watch.